Hey there, today is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. Our headlines from this week, get ready for them. President Trump reads the Bible from the Oval Office, and some people are losing their minds. We're going to talk about it. Classical education schools are on the rise. Non-binary identity declines with California teens. Let's talk about it. Time for Parent Alert.
And it shall be answered, because they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them and served them. Therefore has he brought all this evil upon them.
What? That is the worst Bible reading I have ever seen. No edits or camera angles could fix that.
We're not looking for edits or camera angles to fix it. Okay, that we're going to talk about this today. I'm going to give you my hot take as a mom. That little clip was something that I found online last night. And in fact, I'm just realizing now that I did not notate what Instagram account that was, so I'm going to look for that and get it to you. But that is President Trump reading the Bible from the Oval Office. Some folks are losing their minds. We're going to get into what it means for families and parents and kind of what the internet was saying and how we should sort of discuss it and why it's important to us to talk to our kids. All right, welcome everybody. I'm Jill Simonian from PragerU Kids, here every Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific time on PragerU's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X. If you're joining us live, yay, hooray. I am so happy you're here. Later, this episode will be on our website at PragerU.com. I always say drop me a comment and tell me where you're watching live from, because I really am curious. We here at PragerU are in California. So if there's any Californians, let me know where you're at. And if you haven't already subscribed, PragerUkids.com for educational and entertaining short videos and lessons for kindergarten through 12th graders, history, civics, good character, and financial literacy. We are officially on year 5 for PragerU Kids. So if you go to our website, everything is free, full transparency. You can download every book. You can watch every video in full for free. And enjoy learning about our great country. Okay, let's take a look at what you came here for. The clip that you saw at the very top was one of many, many, many online reactions to President Trump reading the Bible. And let's just take a quick look at a short clip without a reaction right now to see, what the heck he did last night.
My people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land.
Okay, so President Trump read from the Bible last night from the Oval Office as part of this week's America Reads the Bible initiative. It was happening at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. This has been planned as a week-long initiative for this week in April. I mean, it's been, a year plus planned. It's to honor America 250, to revisit our roots as Americans. I've actually been to the Museum of the Bible. This is a side note. I went last summer with my family. It is an incredible walk through world and U.S. history. And there's actually a virtual reality ride. Leave me a comment if you've been to the Museum of the Bible and you've been on this virtual reality ride that takes you through all of the Washington, D.C. monuments and shows you how many U.S. historical landmarks in Washington, D.C. have scripture etched into them. So Trump, in that clip, is among 500 participants in this marathon Bible reading that's happening. It's being live streamed this week on, I believe it's AmericaReadsTheBible.com. President Trump's verse that he was assigned was of course recorded earlier, I'm guessing, due to his schedule since he is the president of the United States. But there's lots of celebrities, lots of leaders participating in this marathon reading, continuous reading of the Bible from Genesis 1:1 all the way through to the book of Revelations. This is, has been a planned event. America Reads the Bible. And President Trump read from 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 11 through 22. And it is a call to God to heal the land. Let's go ahead and just run that clip again, because I think I called it out to run it prematurely, but let's just run it again now that I've set it up for you. Let's see if we can get it going. Let me know if we can.
My people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land.
Okay, so I happen to be a Christian. In the Bible, this is Solomon's prayer and God's response. And again, it's 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 11 through 22. So lots of people are losing their minds. The clip, if you tuned in from the very beginning, at the very top, was from, and I'm going to look it up right now in real time because I marked it. And I want to give credit where credit's due. I always do that. Okay, so this is from the Instagram account, the clip that you saw at the very, very top of the guy reacting and sort of making faces and was not all that enamored with President Trump's reading. His Instagram handle is Zeus, Tripleh. And everyone is entitled to a free opinion here in the United States of America. I always say, I may not agree with your point of view, what you have to say, but I'll always defend your ability to say it. So his expressions were pretty, telling regarding how he feels about the president. And in the comments, people are, this is AI Trump. Satan can read. This is another one of those AI videos. Last time I heard prosperously pronounced that way, we were reading aloud in the 5th grade. He's really trying to repent. It's like listening to a record backwards. This is AI, big time. This is AI. People are thinking this is AI. You guys get educated. It's not AI. It is part of a larger initiative that is inspiring people to read the Bible out loud. So here's what I say. So, and I'll give you some background on this. This particular verse, and share this with your children, share this with your colleagues and peers and friends or whatever. This particular verse is actually very historical for America. Past presidents have used this verse many, many different times. President Dwight Eisenhower took the oath of office in 1953 with his hand on a Bible opened to 2 Chronicles. Ronald Reagan cited this same verse in his 1984 National Day of Prayer proclamation. This verse has been read at numerous National Day of Prayer events. It was featured in the 2024 Republican National Convention. And the verse again is, if people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. That is God's response in Scripture to Solomon's prayer. So I'm asking as parents, share, no matter how you feel about President Trump reading the Bible, share the historical significance of this verse with people who might not be aware of it. Because inevitably, someone they know is going to be making fun of the president reading the Bible. They're going to be uninformed about the larger event that it was a part of regarding America Reads the Bible for America 250. And they're going to be shouting the whole cliche, separation of church and state. A president should not be reading the Bible verses from the Oval Office, when in fact, see, this is where we have to get smart in our history knowledge. We have to dispel this myth, this perception of our country was founded with a philosophy of separation in church and state. Our country was founded with a philosophy that the government cannot tell you how to worship God. It's freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. So when people start shouting this cliche of separation of church and state, the United States was in fact founded as a Christian nation if you go back to source documents. The colonies, and we have videos about this at PragerU. You can also go to the source documents. You can go to the original letters that Thomas Jefferson wrote, that John Adams wrote, their original writings. Colonies, our original colonies, had charters that required their leaders to be Bible-believing Christians. So when the founders drafted the Declaration of Independence 250 years ago now, And when they drafted the Constitution, the context that they created the United States of America in to exist was that of Bible-believing leaders and constituents. John Adams said, you cannot have a free republic without a moral and educated people. And at that time, the morality and the education was rooted in the Holy Bible. Whether or not, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, that's what the fact was. So it doesn't matter if you're religious or not, and if it doesn't matter if you happen to agree with the president or not, we as parents should at least remind our kids that when someone reads the Bible, it should be respected as part of our shared American history, whether or not you and your family happens to believe in the Bible. At the very least, it should be regarded and honored. You know what? That is part of American history. Kids who are educated at classical schools already know this, of course, which leads me straight into our next headline. But drop a comment. Tell me what you think about America Reads the Bible. If you've tuned in, it is a rededication of sorts, honoring our founding and America 250. And, just another side note too, I am going to add this. My producer's probably ready to kill me, like get to the next headline. But I am going to add this. This week on social media, in my scrolls, I did see a post from NBC's The Today Show. I used to do a lot of work with the Today Show on their parenting team prior to coming here to work for PragerU Kids. But I did see a clip of Jenna Bush Hager interviewing her dad, George W. Bush, on the Today Show. And, she asked a really important question that I think all of us should ask. And she asked, how can we come back to each other when everyone is so divided? And President George W. said, listen, I think everyone, regardless of where you stand, regardless of how you feel right now, and where your perception and mind is being pulled in this very polarizing climate, I think everyone needs to come back together by way of America 250, of honoring our 250 years as a nation. And he just recommended, no matter how you feel about George W. Bush, a lot of people, we all cry unity, 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 but there's very few that can really walk the walk and talk the talk and say, listen, let's talk to our kids about what it means to be unified as Americans, no matter what our differences. I myself was not a fan of President Biden. However, if there was a time when President Biden was participating in a national Bible reading initiative event, and if he were to have read a Bible verse from the Oval Office, what I would have said to my own kids was, you know what? I don't agree with the guy. I think he's damaged this nation. However, at least he's reading from our Bible. I would have said that. Okay, on to the next headline. Classical education. Again, classical education kids already know that America's founding and history is rooted in the Bible. So the Washington Post recently shared this headline and article. And this is the headline. This teaching method, backed by conservatives, is on the rise. So the article begins, if you look it up, and the article begins. It takes place in Palm Bay, Florida. And I'm just going to read you a bit of it right now. Seniors at Pineapple Cove Classical Academy draw upon the Bible and books from the Western canon to answer a quintessential question in their capstone project. What is the good life? Children at the K-12 school learn Latin, engage in the Socratic method, and write in cursive. Imagine that. The use of technology is rare. Students walk past paintings of historical scenes and include Betsy Ross sewing an American flag and down hallways lined with portraits of the founding fathers. We are going to honor the creation of our flag. We are going to honor George Washington, Lisa Wheeler, principal of the Palm Bay campus, said of the school. She wants students to graduate with an understanding of the Western civilization and an appreciation for the great people who founded our country. That is from the article that the Washington Post shared this week, citing that classical education is on the rise. And what they did was that they pegged it to conservative ideology. Let's bring up another quote from this article right now, and this is a critique. So, quote, critics of the classical approach, including some education experts, say the schools can be a Trojan horse for conservative ideology and promote a myopic worldview, undermining efforts to expand curriculums to better reflect the experiences of all students in public K-12 schools, the majority of whom are not white. My response as a mom whose kids are currently in a classical school, whose students are overwhelmingly Hispanic, by the way. Stop rejecting learning history based on skin color. Rejecting historical studies in the tenets of Western civilization that built our nation because it includes white people is a form of racism. My next insight, drop me a comment, tell me what you think. My next insight is my personal experience. I have personally experienced firsthand through my children the level of wonderfully challenging difficulty and how classical education teaches kids how to develop sharp literacy, how to absorb material, how to learn history, how to discuss it in a very logical and practical way. If your kid is in a classical education school, you may have had the experience of taking them to an art museum and they actually knew what they were looking at and had historical context and could explain to you why it was important during that time. I took my kids to the Louvre in Paris a few years ago. We went as a family. I frankly had very little idea and context about all of the things I was looking at. I like to think that I was a well-educated, cultured person. I went to a gifted and talented education school, elementary through junior high. I then went to a public school that I was very happy to go to, but I had no idea what I was looking at. I look back now and I think, my gosh, how much history, gaps of knowledge I have through a non-classical education. And if your kids go to class, I'm a firm believer that classical education is on the rise because parents are genuinely understanding the importance of the philosophy of what classical education does. And I'm going to take you through it right now, just in case you don't know. So one of them, and I'm also of the point of view that public schools, if we want to fix our public schools, every single public school in America should incorporate tenets and methods of classical education. One of the most effective ways to learn how to study is through what's called the classical trivium. I'm going to nerd out for a minute. Stick with me. Grammar, dialectic, rhetoric. This trivium, this three-part philosophy of classical education, organizes learning that's focused in stages that lead students for how to think critically. It teaches them how to think critically. So grammar teaches primary knowledge, memorization of worthwhile skills. You're memorizing spelling, you're memorizing math facts, you're memorizing the periodic table as an elementary school child. Facts. Memorizing the math facts is helpful. You can't deny it. When you memorize math facts, the rest of your math is going to get a lot easier. Teachers and educators are now admitting that now. Dialectic is the second stage of classical education, and it's for the teen set. Dialectic is reasoning and analysis. So it teaches teens how to argue purposefully, how to argue intellectually. Why do we think this way? It includes a lot of writing, and that's real writing, writing cursive, because the physicality of putting something into your brain by way of cursive handwriting is definitely real. Again, educators and admin are now backpedaling on removing cursive from schools years ago because they're saying, oh, you know what, cursive actually is helpful and ignites the brain in ways that typing doesn't. So there's that. And then the last stage of classical education is called rhetoric, which is persuasion, civil discourse, how our government needs to function, presenting ideas, discussing them, compromising with those you disagree with based on facts and reason. These are all things that we need to have a functioning society. Classical education draws on teaching methods from Greece and Rome. The approach has found popularity among families who say that the methods offer more rigor than schools that have relaxed their grading policies, lowered the standards, or have turned to screens for most of the day. And supporters argue that the Eurocentric content is more proven than some of these newer, trendier, modern teaching. And modern ways, again, modern ways of teaching recently, in the last year specifically, have been publicly acknowledged to have not benefited kids in the way that educators and experts, I use that word loosely, thought that they would have benefited kids. Cursive is being brought back because educators realized, kids really should learn how to use cursive because the physicality of writing ignites the brain. Certain math pathways, traditional math pathways, are being brought back. Many public schools years ago veered off the traditional algebra, geometry, algebra 2, trigonometry, calculus pathway because they tried to reinvent something by way of Common Core they argued that at the time, Common Core teaching would help the children understand things from a deeper level when actually it just confused them. So many public schools are returning to the traditional math pathways now that they saw the Common Core modern way didn't work. Many public schools now are returning to phonics, understanding that the alternative ways to teach reading did not work for young people. We can see failing literacy rates now. Less than half of kids across the nation are not proficient in reading in school, largely because phonics was removed. EdTech is now being reconsidered. Every single public school went straight to EdTech, where it was one-on-one laptops, Chromebooks for kids. Now, just recently even, oh my goodness, and we'll probably talk about it next week, LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District, I don't agree with most of what they do. However, they are now backpedaling, saying we need to take the screens out of the classroom a little bit more than we thought we would need to because the screens are not educating kids. So again, classical education has been around for a few, long time, over 100 years. And it's now on the rise. So of the 895 classical schools in the United States right now, 1/3 of them opened or adopted the model between 2020 and 2024. Let's take a look at some of the numbers just so you can get a firm grasp. Now that I went on that big rant, right? Let's take a look at the numbers in the graph right here. This is the growth of classical education schools after 2020. This graph is from the Heritage Foundation. And we can see how sharply the growth of classical schools accelerated after 2020. People were searching for truth, reason, and virtue during a time of 2020 misinformations and fear-based unnecessary lockdowns. Next, I want to take a look at the map of the United States. Which states have the most classical schools? And as we can see right here, Texas and Florida have the most classical education schools. All schools, and again, the critics are saying, it's conservative ideology. But here's the deal. All schools in America used to teach by way of classical education since the beginning of schools. Since the very beginning of schools. In fact, we do have a craftery episode on PragerUkids.com, and I believe it's the episode we did where I made the book cover for kids and I told them a brief history of how schools started in the United States. And since the beginning of formal education in the United States, kids would learn Latin. Kids would learn how to read using the Bible. By stripping modern schools of classical tenets, our education system has been watered down and smashed. And I saw someone online the other day say that the standards and the bar has been dropped so low for modern schools and the modern way of teaching that everyone is now tripping over the bar and we're hurting ourselves. And that is such a true, I don't say that lightly, but that is such a true assessment of what is going on. Classical education is the way that kids used to learn and gain true knowledge. And it actually makes me very upset as a mom that this tried and true way of teaching kids through grammar, through rhetoric, through dialectic has just been abandoned by trendy methods that we are now seeing several years later after implementation are not working. Why would we ever put a lid on how our children's brains develop towards thinking clearly and logically? And you know what else? Classical education, you know what they don't do actually? They do not invoke climate change fear or panic. All right, leads me to the next headline. Today is April 22nd, Earth Day. So you didn't think that we were going to let this day go without talking about Earth Day. And one of the common misconceptions about conservative or traditional, those of us who believe in traditional education like classical education, we actually love the earth. We actually do love the earth. I want to protect the earth. I want to protect our water. I want to protect our air. I want clean air. I want clean food. I want water for our farmers. I want a healthy environment. I want to make sure that my children notice the God-created, divinely created beauty around them in our trees, in our plants, in the land, in the earth, in the water, in the sea, all of these things. But learning about and honoring our planet, especially on April 22nd, also includes learning the truth about energy. We do live in the modern world. We need to learn the costs and benefits of how to attain energy and maintain energy for electricity, for power. We've got an episode to share with your teens this week. Let's roll the clip.
In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and Poland supported the Ukrainian people. As a result, Russia stopped supplying Poland with natural gas, and Poland banned the Russian coal that many people use to heat their homes. These sudden changes are making energy even more expensive. Anya is finally recognizing the bitter irony. Poland's efforts to be more green had left them vulnerable to Russia's manipulations. And unlike her friends, she's starting to wonder, are her country's wind farms and solar panels producing enough energy to replace the coal and gas everyone had been using? From what she's reading, Anya sees that renewable energy sources don't contribute that much energy. Unlike coal or fossil fuels, energy from wind or sun is unreliable, expensive, and difficult to store. In fact, only 10% of the world's energy comes from those sources. This makes Anya wonder, where will Poland get the energy it needs? If coal and gas are banned, and if renewable energy isn't enough, then what's the plan?
Okay, so good questions to ask. That was a clip from our Around the World series. Anaya's Energy Crisis is the name of the episode. There is a companion book, and I have it right here. You can buy this book on Amazon, or you can, is there a glare on it? There we go, here we go. You can buy this book on Amazon, or you can download it for free on our website, pragerukids.com. This is a book that explains energy poverty, through facts about Poland, fossil fuels versus renewables, coal, regarding the coal ban that happened in Poland, regarding spreading the word about what renewable energy is, opportunities in activism, Poland's pollution problem, all of these things in the episode and the accompanying book that we have created. This is for the teens. This is for middle school, high school. And here's the thing. We believe in encouraging kids to look at all sides of a problem. Look at all sides of an issue. There's no one way to solve this issue of protecting our earth, protecting our environment, making sure that humankind has enough energy to function on in a modern society, making sure everyone is clean and safe and cared for with appropriate electricity. The video is free to watch for anyone, pragerukids.com. Get the full scope of the story. Use our materials to get a side of the story that perhaps the public school is not allowing children to consider or learn about. So let's get to our final headline today. California Post shared an article last week. Fewer teens identifying as non-binary on their driver's license. So an article last week in the California Post cited that there has been a startling shift in teens identifying as non-binary in California. That's the headline. So pretty much the takeaway is this. After years of steady growth, the number of 16 and 17-year-olds in California who are identifying as non-binary on their driver's licenses has dropped sharply. And this is according to new data from the California Department of Motor Vehicles. So the option for a non-binary X gender marker on state driver's licenses was introduced in 2019 under California's Gender Recognition Act, okay? In the first year, just 38 16-year-olds, which is, of course, the minimum age for a driver's license, selected the non-binary designation. So let's pull up a graph now, and I want to show you sort of like the trajectory, what's happened. There we go. This graph is actually from the San Francisco Standard publication, and it shows 16 and 17-year-olds. If you're watching live, you can take a look. So the numbers rose steadily from when this option of non-binary was first introduced in 2019. The numbers rose steadily, peaking in 2023 with 164 16-year-olds, but the trend has since reversed. The figure fell to 95 16-year-olds identifying as non-binary in 2024, and then dropped again to just 46 16-year-olds in 2025 who were opting for that non-binary marker on their licenses. So this trend of rising and then dropping also tracks for 17-year-olds, where non-binary licenses declined from 418 to 203 between 24 and 2025. So that's about half. That's a significant drop. Some folks, if you read either of the articles, either in the California Post or in the San Francisco Standard, some folks are likening this decline as, kids being so scared of the political leaders and they're scared they're going to be persecuted. As a parent, I will tell you, I cannot help but feel thankful that maybe, just maybe, teens might be returning to common sense and truth. This is a result. I have to ask, is this drop maybe a result from the tragedy that was happening across the country in young women's high school sports, where boys were competing as girls? Last year, if you were in California, you may have known the, viral headlines about California's Interscholastic Federation, which runs high school sports. They faced a lot of challenges about a year ago from parents and families and students who stood up against biological boys competing against biological girls. The track and field meet, the finals, the track and field meet, which happened in Central California, there was a biological boy who competed as a girl and won. And it really just brought, CIF did all sorts of gymnastics to try and quell everyone. And, it did, long story short, it didn't work. It really was a wake-up call because, it was a wake-up call that so many girls now their accomplishments are being compromised, and their sports organizations have been hijacked by biological boys. And it's not truthful. It is not inclusive for anyone. And it's very sad. And so I have to think maybe teenagers and families are returning to common sense regarding this issue of non-binary. There is truth and there is not truth. And it doesn't mean that, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, but there are males and there are females. In fact, a February 2025 survey by the Pew Research Center found that a majority of Americans favor requiring transgender athletes to compete on teams that match their sex assigned at birth. And support for gender-affirming care for minors specifically, has also declined because gender-affirming care has been rightfully revoked and rebuked and stopped at many pediatric hospitals who realized that this lie of gender-affirming care for minors, puberty blockers, is in fact harmful for kids and parents, and it's a violation of do no harm, the medical oath. Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, Sutter Health in Northern California, Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, they've all slowed or stopped their gender-affirming care practices for minors, with or without parental consent, because it's destroyed lives. It's destroyed families. It's destroyed the medical profession. Not to mention it's a huge waste of money. So this driver's license thing with teenagers gave me a little bit of hope that people are returning to common sense, and teenagers maybe are, and their families are understanding that this is in fact, this non-binary perception has been a moral contagion. So here's hoping we return to truth. Okay, I'm going to turn now to money, because it is still April and we all paid taxes. And I don't want to let April pass you by, parents, without encouraging you to introduce the notion of how to manage money with your teenagers. If you're fans of us, you are very well aware of our Cash Course series and financial literacy workbook. Right here, I have been touting it all month long, a financial literacy workbook that aligns with all of our Cash Course videos. This is for teens. It's easy, it's fun, it's fast. Here's a sampling of our episode about taxes so you can get a little bit of insight about what we discuss in these Cash Course videos. Let's roll the clip.
If you someday own a home or some land, you may have to pay property tax. Then, if you made a profit investing, there's a capital gains tax. Own a business? You may have to pay a franchise tax on the net worth of its capital.
Really?
And buying some soda with that chicken? It might require an excise tax.
You kidding me?
Oh, and that vacation you're on? There's probably an added travel tax.
Oh, come on.
Okay, I get it. Taxes are everywhere. But is there a way to reduce the taxes I pay?
Fortunately, there is. When it's time to do your taxes, you can claim things like charitable giving, mortgage interest, and healthcare costs to reduce your taxable income. These are called deductions. On the other hand, credits, like the child credit when you have kids you can claim as dependent, are subtracted from the amount of taxes owed. So, now that you know a bit more about taxes, it's time to take action.
Stuff our teens need to learn, right? Okay, and with that clip, so that was our Understanding Taxes episode. I just want to show you what is on the inside of our Cash Course Financial Literacy Workbook. You go to, here we go, Understanding Taxes Lesson Plan. This is a lesson plan about the learning objectives, the key vocabulary, the educational standards that it hits for grade levels right here, the academic subject areas, what you'll need. It's a 45-minute lesson plan here for you to walk through with your students or your own children. And then there's an Understanding Taxes worksheet, which checks for understanding. There's multiple choice questions. There's matching to make sure that the kids understood. Oh, there's also a section, Know Your Tax Forms, W-2 and W-4 lesson plan. Now, this, in fact, is another episode on our Cash Course series. And again, it's a full lesson plan, turnkey. You don't have to know anything about taxes yourself, but this walks parents and teachers through how to teach these financial literacy concepts that are often so very confusing to us adults, but our kids need to learn this stuff. I've often said that financial literacy should be considered an American value because it includes having responsibility for oneself, which is the foundation for a safe, secure, and prospering nation, right? Right. Okay, that's it for us on Parent Alert. We are out of time. Drop me your comments if you want to discuss anything for future episodes. Subscribe to PragerUkids.com for free. We will send you new releases delivered to your inbox for your kids. Don't miss an episode about U.S. and world history, American values, good character, civics, financial literacy. Perfect, perfect, perfect for honoring America 250 and bringing the nation, all of us, back to each other again through our differences of opinion, right? Thank you for your support of PragerU Kids. We cannot do any of this without you. All of our content is free, including free downloadable books, free videos. Links to our PragerU Kids releases and resources that I shared with you in this episode of Parent Alert are in fact linked to in the description if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or later on our website, prageru.com. God bless you all. I encourage you to read the Bible this week along with America Reads the Bible. Turn a nation towards God. We need all the healing we can get, right? See you next time on Parent Alert.